Proceedings are now resumed.
Mr. Chairman.
So we want to go ahead and pick up the examination of the appropriations now of EGA 7. But before we do, I just want to give members an indication of our intent today is to finish the education budget. And if we can get this through in time, we want to do the Ministry of Finance as well. So let that be your guide. EGA 7, Education Services for Students with Special Needs, $9,664,727 in 2018 and $10,197,507 in 2019. Are there any questions? Member for Newlands?
We're EGA 7, Mr. Chairman.
EGA 7,
okay. No,
Education Services.
I just had one quick question. Well, I mean, I see where the amount allocated here has been increased significantly. So I just wanted to know what the driver for that was and where this extra spend will be.
Mr. Chairman, the Chief will answer, but I believe a significant amount that relates to staffing.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could we get some details on what staffing breakdown it would include?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the staffing that I alluded to earlier in the morning session, much of that staffing relates to this output group because it would be, for example, hiring assistant teachers to assist with students with special education needs. So the budget is coded to this output group for those. I can give the details or I can endeavor to provide the listing in writing.
Yep, later on it would be fine, Mr. Chairman. And I'm, based on the earlier discussion, I'm assuming then that these resources will be allocated depending on, not just on the based on the equity model, but also on the areas with the highest need.
Mr. Chairman, through you, that is correct.
Thank you.
I put the question. All those in favor of EGA 7, Education Services for Students with Special Needs, $9,664,727 in 2018 and $10,197,507 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. EGA 8, Facilities Maintenance and Operational Support, School Support Services, $8,206,914 in 2018, $8,487,990 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Member for Newlands?
Oh. I'll give way to the member from Central.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the member of Newlands. Through you, Mr. Chair, can the ministry give us an indication on how far we're going to get structurally with the new high school with the budget allocations for 2018-2019? From an average person's perspective who doesn't really understand how far the money that is allocated can go because they don't understand the value from a construction perspective, what should we see at the end of the 2019 budget, visually?
Mr. Chair, we are happy to answer that when we're dealing with maintenance and operation. We have a specific capital item with that. If the member would mind, we'd answer it on the capital. Just remind us, please.
Mr. Chairman?
Member from Newlands.
I'm assuming it would be appropriate to ask in this section here on the plans for the Bordentown Primary School Hall. I know that there are plans that have been drawn up, but I don't know how far along we are in implementation and building.
Mr. Chairman, both Savannah and Bordentown is in need of a hall. As it is now, we have to do it in a phase incremental stage. So we have not yet made the decision that it's going to be Bordentown or Savannah. We need to have some further input. But in any event, it'll be one first and the next one. So one will happen in this stage, the next one will come on in 2020.
Thank you for the answer to the Minister, Mr. Chairman. And also, based on our visits to the schools recently, Savannah Primary in particular, there was a need for the reception playground area to be covered. It's currently, there's no shade there for the kids to play in during the day. And the ground itself is just sand and marl. So these are reception kids playing there during playtime and so on. The member from Bordentown West, myself, and the member from Savannah just recently donated quite a bit of playground equipment to the school, but it's a bit of a shame because when they try to use the equipment, there's no cover, there's no shade. So, you know, we're a bit concerned about especially kids that age being out in the hot sun.
Mr. Chair, I'll ask the Chief Officer to respond, please.
Mr. Chair, through you, we have been systematically going through schools in several rounds. So first it was to add sufficient playground equipment, and the softball type that we were using historically was sand. Now we are going through and adding covers and also adding the softball, which like what you'd find at Georgetown Primary, which is a walking softball, almost like a trampoline type surface. And so we are, our plan is to just systematically go through the whole system and eventually end up where we have all proper playground equipment, covers for all equipment, and softball in place.
And final one from me, Mr. Chairman. And I've raised it a number of times now, but we do feel, and we have representation from constituents who feel that it's time to start making plans for a third primary school in the Bordentown district. Is there any plan for the government to put that on the agenda? I'm not saying build it tomorrow, but we need to have plans because we are the fastest growing district.
Mr. Chair, thank the member for that answer. It has been under active consideration, but as far as prioritization, it is the united view that the primary school that is needed in West Bay would be the first one to come, but the one that the member spoke of is on the charts. It's just a matter of budgeting and financing, but yes, it has not been forgotten.
Thank you.
Member for Georgetown.
Mr. Chair, through you, can the ministry say, or through the minister say, when the Red Bay Primary School softball plans will be implemented? I know it is in Georgetown Primary, but Red Bay is also in my Red Bay Primary School, covers constituents in my constituency. I'd like to know when their playground area would be addressed.
Chief Officer will respond.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, while we're waiting, just want to point out just a little bit of housekeeping. I noticed that on EGA 8, which pulls from DES 6 and DES 10, if you add those numbers up together, that relates to the 2016-2017 forecast, it creates the impression as if though the annualized spend is dropping by 1.1 million, but when you actually look at those individual and you add them up, you see that the forecast for 2016-2017 is actually stated higher when in fact it is actually lower, and the spend is actually going up by 41,000. So you just may want to probably take a look at that just to correct it. Thanks.
Got that. FS has the information. He'll take a look at it. Please go ahead. you ready?
Mr. Chairman, through you, on the schedule for the next 2 years, we do not have Red Bay playground scheduled. What we would need to do is to address that through any savings in capital.
Mr. Chair, through you, can you explain to my constituents why all the other schools are going to be prioritized other than Red Bay? Or give a justification for why Red Bay Primary School is not going to be on the schedule for until 2020.
Mr. Chairman, through you, it is not a matter of prioritizing Red Bay the least. It's we only have limited capital funds, and we have a great deal of work to do with those funds. And so we approach the capital first with in terms of the big items. Our biggest item for the next 2 years is the John Gray High School. And then we continue to allocate funds according to needs until they run out. In looking at Red Bay, we are providing 3 classrooms and some redesign and refurbish in order to facilitate the reception. And there's different items being provided for different schools. Ideally, we would be able to provide all of it in one period, but we know that that's not going to work given the total capital allocation available for government.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you again, Mr. Chair, and a follow-up question. Just so my constituents don't feel disenfranchised in any way, can you say how did you come to the decision that Red Bay would not be addressed in that respect in this term, and why other primary schools and not Red Bay? That there has to be a process that you come to that conclusion so they can feel comfortable to say, well, okay, then that Red Bay is not being disenfranchised.
Mr. Chairman, I was listening quite intently to my chief officer explain that, and he just explained what the member is asking again. But I can say that our esteemed and honorable Premier has the constituency of Red Bay, and I can give you the commitment that if there's a need that's brought to his attention, he will certainly ensure that Red Bay gets what it wants.
Through you, Mr. Chair, and I hate to have brought the Premier into this, but I'm not going to depend on the Premier to take care of Red Bay Primary School, because there's constituents that fall in Georgetown Central that go to Red Bay Primary School. So my job and my responsibility is to make sure to look out for the schools that they attend, as well as all the other schools in the Cayman Islands, but particularly that I represent. So I'm sorry for not depending on the Premier to deal with that matter. I would just like to educate and inform my constituents as to the reasons why. And sorry if I missed it, or maybe it can be reiterated again.
Mr. Chairman, to summarize what my chief officer said, there was a matter of prioritization within the fiscal constraints, not only from a financial perspective, but from the educational need. Red Bay was the only primary school that did not have a reception, and it was done for an incremental development even before I came on stage. So it was deemed necessary by the technocrats, which I endorsed, that it was important for Red Bay to get a reception school. So that has been budgeted for, the staff for it, and all the ancillary amenities that is needed there on. As far as the playing area is concerned, I too visited there last week, and there were certain things that I discussed with the principal and certain things that I saw. It was obviously we were not able to get it into this budget, but there is provision under the PMFL that if there were unforeseen circumstances you could get, and that's why I indicated that our esteemed and able and capable Premier, who's responsible for that constituency, once they bring it to his attention, I am more than confident that he was so obliged and direct the caucus for his full support.
Mr. Chair,
Premier.
I have been dragged into this. Just let me say this. let me just say this, Mr. Chairman. We strive to treat all our people, in particular our children, equally and equitably in the division of the limited resources available to government. Had I, as Premier, insisted that Red Bay Primary School not only got 3 new classrooms and the other things, plus the softball, we would have had to have taken resources away from Georgetown Central, Georgetown Primary School, or some other school. And then there would have been another carry on. So believe you me, if I were selfish in the sense of wanting everything for my constituency, the result would have been very different than it currently is. But we need to ensure that to the best of our abilities and within government's limited resources, we allocate fairly and equitably. And that's what the government is trying to do. I hope we're not going to get beat up for that.
And Mr. Chair, let me just add this on. I thank the Honorable Premier for his assistance, but I can also say that the technocrats responsible for the Red Bay facility is also actively looking to see whether there were any savings in this year's budget, because it's probably going to run from between $25,000 to $35,000 to do what we think is a necessary fix. And unfortunately, he is out ill today, so I'm not able to confirm to the extent of the progress, but it is being looked into actively, because I visited here last week, as I said, with the principal and so forth, and that there were needs that perhaps were not above the radar at the time of the budget.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I apologize. Again, the minister started off by saying we're not getting this political. I did not, by any means, try to make it political. I have a responsibility to my constituents. My constituents go to
Member,
Mr. Chair, Mr. Chair, in all due respect, if you're going to allow the Premier to have a comment in respect to the question, I should have a rebuttal as well. I've seen it happen before on the floor of the House in the last 3 days.
Mr. Chair, I have sat here for days. I hardly say anything because it is the opposition who should have the greatest opportunity. But if that member believes that he is going to come in here, start dealing with issues in my constituency and expect me not to say anything, then he obviously didn't learn anything in the time that he was working with me for the 18 months. Because it's not going to happen. If he wants to get into a brawl in here, we can have it.
Member from Georgetown, I think the question has been answered, so I would only ask that you move on with something else.
Mr. Chair, in all due respect, yet again you've allowed him to say a piece with no question, and I'm not allowed to respond. Nobody's asking him to nobody's talking to him about.
I am trying to bring this kerfuffle to an end.
But
why wouldn't you ask the question, sir? And the answer has been given twice. I'm just asking, let's move on to something else. If you have other questions that need to be asked, let's get them done.
Mr. Chair, can the ministry give the reasonings behind why Red Bay was chosen not to have theirs? What's the process by saying, okay, well, Red Bay needs it the least? I want to understand that. That's what I'm trying to establish.
I think they indicated to us, sir, that it was a matter of resources and the allocation of those scarce resources. That there are other things that had to be dealt with as well. It's not just that one school or that
But there's loads of things that need to be
project.
dealt with, Mr. Chair. But I'm saying that, did they come to the conclusion that Red Bay needed it the least? That's you have. Of course, there's loads of things to be done. But what was the process of their conclusion to say Red Bay doesn't need it now? We can deal with them in 2020. I think it's a rational question, sir.
I understand you, sir. But what I'm saying, the process was an allocation of scarce resources. Red Bay is getting 3 classrooms,
right,
as well. I mean, are there any other questions? If not, I put this to the vote. All those in favor of EGA 8, Facilities Maintenance and Operational Support Service, School Support Services, for $8,206,914 and $8,487,990, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. EGA 9, Training and Support for Adults with Disabilities, $1,630,421 in 2018 and $1,630,421 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chairman.
Member from Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is just a short comment. Excuse me. When the disability policy was done and prepared and lead up to it, eventually the Solomon-Webster bill, I would just say I was so disappointed that Miss Mary Trumbach, who spent many years working along with them, I don't even think they mentioned her name in any of the things that I saw in the paper or anything. I just wanted to say I was very sad to see that.
Are there any other questions? Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Member from Newlands.
Just on the Sunrise Center, what are the plans to expand that, increase capacity?
I'll ask Chief Officer Sukuk to respond, please.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the plans that the ministry have are to actually build a purpose-built facility. In other words, a new Sunrise Center. At present, we have developed an OBC, and we are in the process of just finalizing that and drafting cabinet paper for the minister's review so that the minister can bring that forward to cabinet.
Thank you. I noticed in the quantities we're talking about, 16-17, we had 35 full-time clients registered. I'm assuming those will be at the Sunrise Center.
That's correct.
Just moving forward from there, 2018 we have 45 to 60. So, Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to know is, does that number represent everyone who is in need of the services at the Sunrise Center, or is there also, in addition to this, a waiting list?
Mr. Chair, we'll ask the technocrat to respond for that, please.
My name is Kimberly Voden. I'm the director at the Sunrise Adult Training Center. Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you very much for that question. If I just want to make sure that I have all the points that you wanted me to touch on. You were asking, the member was asking just to clarify on the numbers that we serve currently and if there is a wait list. Is that correct? Okay. So in total, at present, on our, we have two streams currently of programming really that we offer. Our day program serves 35 clients who attend on a daily basis. And we have an additional 22 clients who are working in the community who we also support. We actually this past year have just appointed a net new vocational program officer. And so we intend to increase the number of vocational program clients that we serve. So that also accounts for some of the anticipated increase. Oh yes, the wait list also. We do have currently a wait list of roughly 40 clients, plus an additional 9 elderly former Sunrise clients who no longer receive services. We do predict that the wait list will grow, but we look to serve that wait list in future, as the Chief Officer mentioned, through the provision of our new purpose-built facility.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as a follow-up then, is there an interim solution that can address, if not 100% of the needs of the waiting list, but maybe some of the needs? Is there any solution in mind to going forward until we have a permanent solution?
Mr. Chair, I'm reliably informed that the current facility is a rented facility, and we have to return it to its original state, so there's limited or no expansion capabilities there. And the technocrat will wish to add to that.
the Honourable Minister said things that were absolutely correct. Again, Mr. Chairman, just mentioning that by our addition to our staff, by the one net new post of the additional vocational officer, we aim to tackle those on the wait list that are higher functioning and able to benefit from vocational training and placement and supported employment. Many of the clients, potential clients that have been graduated from Lighthouse School, for example, in recent years would really benefit from those services. So that's one service that we hope to provide. Additionally, we are looking at tightening up or reviewing our enrollment criteria, as well as then potential streams of programming, as for many years Sunrise has been the be-all and end-all for everybody, all adults with special needs in Grand Cayman. And hopefully once we, as we develop those streams of programming and clarify our enrollment criteria then, and also with the provision of a purpose-built building, we'll be able to have a greater dynamic flow of clients through our services in the future.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And that's what I meant by interim solution, not that we would add on to the building and capacity, but find other ways to address some of their needs, not every single need, but so that no one feels left out or that they're waiting for a long time. Thank you.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I just want to know if it's the ministry's plan to change the location into a different district, because I've had complaints across the island in respect to it being in West Bay. We have a range of individuals across the island who have disabilities, and I've come to understand that some members don't get to go to the facility because the distance is just too far away. Is it a plan of the ministry to centralize the location? There would be more of a medium ground for the facility.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to report that in the process of the business case, a more central location has been identified. And as soon as we've been able to confirm that, we'll be making a public statement to that effect.
There are no further questions. EGA 9, I put the question. All those in favor of EGA 9, training and support for adults with disabilities, $1,630,421 in 2018 and $1,630,421 in 2019. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. EGA 10, Education, Early Childhood and Support Services, $8,910,103 in 2018 and $9,245,791 in 2019. Are there any questions? I put the question. All those in favor of EGA 10, Education, Early Childhood and Support Services, $8,910,103 in 2018 and $9,245,791 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
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 Those against, no. The ayes have it. EGA 16, Cadet Corps Services, $486,736 in 2018, $582,670 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Member from Bodden Town West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, sir. I was looking to see if we could determine the number of students that we have enrolled in the program. What would be the ideal target? Is there a breakdown by district? And if the number is below the target, is there anything that we can do to encourage more young children to get involved in this program? Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, I'll ask Ms. Bobbitt to answer that, please.
Good afternoon. Bobbitt Logaro, Commandant Cayman Islands Cadet Corps. Through you, Mr. Chair, in order to answer your questions, thank you for those questions. The number of children enrolled in the program right now is around 94 children. 94. We don't have a breakdown according to district, but we do have according to schools. But we don't break down according to schools specifically either, but We have what you call detachments, and we have one at John Gray, one at Clifton Hunter, one at Lehman Scott, Triple C, we have band, and we have marine, and then we have recruits as well. So including all of those areas, those detachments, we have 94 cadets.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Through you again, sir. Is there like a set target or an optimum number that you guys would love to get to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we would love to get to 250 students, but in order to get to the 250 students, our budget would have to increase significantly, and we would need the staffing. We do have only 4 full-time staff. We do have an additional 25 volunteers, and the program is run Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and sometimes Saturday and Sunday.
Thank you again. Through you, Mr. Chairman. Is there a waiting list or anyone wanted to join that you are not able to join?
We do not have a waiting list per se, but we are sometimes selective in the amount of persons that we take in at one time because we want to ensure that we have sufficient adult supervision for them.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Member from East End.
Okay.
I can go first.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. Mr. Chairman, our last Finance Committee, the cadet was housed in Bodden Town. I trust that that has now rectified itself.
Mr. Chairman, I'm exhilarated to report that that has been remedied and they're now in a really lovely facility.
By the Scouts?
By the Scouts on Middle Road.
Yeah,
of course, as we're intended to grow, they're going to be needing some extra space, but it's a huge improvement over where they were in Bodden Town.
Yeah, okay. And a huge improvement over the mold that was there too. Mr. Chairman, we have for quite some time now talked about the Cadet Corps being given its own home. I think my idea of its own home is somewhere in the wilderness where it can do its own thing, like build its own cabins and that kind of stuff. And we talked along the lines of government lineup on the eastern end. Has there been any further thoughts on that?
Thank you, Member through the chair. Mr. Chairman, the Minister can report that myself and the government are avid supporters of Cadet Corps, and having certainly personally had a child that's been through the program, I have an intimate knowledge and respect for what goes on in Cadet Corps. So we will be looking for the placement of a proper home, whether it's in Eastern Wilderness or Cayman fauna. I'll report at a later time.
Well, Mr. Chairman,
that's a joke, member.
I like how the wilderness is a good place to be. Trust me. But on a serious note, Mr. Chairman, there was some land identified in East End, and I don't think the cadet did, but we all know where it was, close to Winners Land and stuff.
Just make sure you don't lie down before no bulldozer when this one comes.
No.
Okay.
No. I think the commandant can attest that for years I've said that's where you all should go, where you build your own cabins and do all your stuff and do your marches through the districts and that kind of stuff. I would love to see that. Mr. Chairman, I want to know how much marine training does the Cadet Corps get?
Mr. Chair, through you, to the honourable member. At present, we have with the Marine Detachment, we have training on Wednesdays and sometimes on Saturdays, and we do offer additional Marine training to the rest of those who aren't Marine cadets. However, we are in need of a boat to further expand the Marine training activities.
Mr. Chairman, before the member from Eastern allows his adrenaline to flow in a higher, let me do an interaction and say that when I did visit Cadet Corps and did my usual removal of the orange peel concept, I discovered that they did need a boat, and I've instructed my chief officer to look at savings to get that, and he's actively pursuing that. So if the member has some in a marine experience, if I'm happy to invite him to speak to my chief officer so that we will get a boat, will not end up on the South Sound Reef.
Oh, I have lots of experience about adrenaline. Only one or two things make that flow.
Please don't tell me. Please don't tell me.
Love or fear, and I don't have either one of them in here. I don't get love, or I'm not fed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I thank the minister. I will gladly help whatever my expertise that I have. I will gladly contribute there too. And if it means we gotta go beg, then I do pretty good at that too. So.
Well, actually, if you go big, then I could use the money that I find for staffing to help the gentleman that we have.
A suitable boat I'm talking about getting a reduced price, them kind of stuff. A suitable boat for that marine side will be, a safe boat will be good money. We can beg. All right. No, the minister got by it. No, stay out of this. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, just a matter of edification for myself. I noticed that under the description you did vocational training at the program. Just for knowledge, so I can tell my constituents what kind of vocational stuff is done there.
Mr. Chair, through you, some of the training that we undertake involves things like animal husbandry, automotive, electronics, but we do those over a 6-week period, usually during the months of May and June. And then throughout, we also offer what you call a BTEC training program in public service.
Those in favor of EGA 16, Cadet Corps Services, $486,736 in 2018 and $582,670 in 2019. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. EGA 17, Sports Services, $4,486,565 in 2018 and $4,522,506 in 2019. Are there any questions? Member for East End.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, can the minister give me an update on the football field East End and the proposed track that was supposed to be put around?
Mr. Chairman, through you to the member, the contract has been signed with Island Paving, and the track is supposed to be commenced in November of this year.
Is it the one that they had proposed around that field?
I'm reliably informed that the member is correct.
May I respectfully say, Mr. Speaker, to the Madam Minister, the football field East End is a FIFA sanctioned field. Regulation, FIFA sanctioned regulation. and they have sanctioned matches there. When they invited me to go look at it, it had cut it nail in two. The only thing can happen there to properly do it is to, Mr. Chairman, sir, is to widen the property. It just does not make sense to put this thing there on what is currently there. If we get more property so that we can have it on the periphery of the football field, then fine. And they agreed with me. Public Works agreed with me. Now here we are, they're saying they're going to continue to do it.
Mr. Chairman, I've consulted just now with my technical staff, and they have assured me that they have pushed the track to the extremity of the property, and it still meets the FIFA regulations. But I would invite the member to meet with the staff himself and satisfy himself that that is the case. That's my information.
Okay. Okay. Well, I guess there may be a different way of doing it, because they were only going to do 2 lanes, I think. 2 lanes. 4?
4 lanes.
And as I understand it, the minimum regulated ones, and this is going to have to be used for the school. Or is this not for the school too? May I ask, Mr. Chairman?
I understand it's a community field, which would include the school utilization.
Okay. And when I was informed that we were going to do it, they were going to lay asphalt and then at a later stage lay the turf, if that's what it's called, the running track on it. And at the time, I engaged the chief officer and I asked, why were we doing that, when I consulted with my cousin who knows about this. And they said that they could only afford 4 and they would add on 2 later. Now, that's penny wise and pound foolish, as far as I'm concerned. If you're going to add on 2 later, it's going to disrupt the entire thing, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if this minister can do something about this.
Mr. Chairman, my staff informs me that it was always 4 as far as their knowledge is concerned. There's no intention to add on 2 more lanes.
Well, I was told that they had done 4. They had 4 was done north side, 4 was done Budden Town, and they were going to add 2 on to each of those. Now, it just doesn't make sense to do that when we don't have the field. Is there any way, Madam, Mr. Chairman, that the minister can say, because I brought that to the attention of Cabinet on July the 25th, about the expansion, the purchase of that property next door, even if it's only some of it, in order that we get sufficient space there to not only do that, but other things, because it's cramped, to build the bathrooms, and I may ask, where are we going to build those as well?
Mr. Chairman, through you to the Honourable Minister, the Minister would appreciate that anything is possible once we have the finances. Unfortunately, within this 2-year cycle, we don't have the finances, but I'd be happy to get the block and parcel number from the property that he's talking about and try to see if I can have it included in the next 2 years.
Well, I do know you weren't in Cabinet that day, and I do apologize that nobody didn't deliver the copy to you of my presentation. But, I guess that was...
No, Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to be facetious, but nobody does include my good friend from the Eastern.
Nobody includes? Nobody does what? All right, all right, all right. We will get. What about the restrooms? Um,
Mr. Chairman, through you, we have a few projects, and that is one of them, that due to the project management process were delayed, either because of, well, frankly, because of short staff nature at PWD in terms of project management, and also in terms of time of getting things through planning, which is nobody's fault, but sometimes when you plan a project, you don't realize that you're going to have to come back and redesign or resubmit. So unfortunately, this project is not going to be completed this year, and we do not currently have funding for this project next year. We are, as the Minister indicated earlier, there, even post our negotiation with Ministry of Finance on our capital budget, we have been made aware through our visitations with departments of various needs, some of which are health and safety needs that will need to be addressed. And so, unfortunately, to a certain extent, some of the capital budget is in a little bit is a little bit fluid right now, while we prioritize those needs, and we'll have to solidify and make decisions before the beginning of the financial year as to which projects go forward and which projects do not go forward. So the project that the member is speaking about is on the list for consideration as to whether it goes forward next year or we'll have to hold off until 2020.
Mr. Chairman, I just need to put it on the record, that's all, that I did my job and called for it, because in the last administration, we in the budget 4 years, and every time they came down here, they took it out. I guess there is no difference here. I want to know about the conditions of the field and the poor condition that is being kept in.
Mr. Chairman, I'll ask the sports director to respond to this, but I know there was a problem with ants when I had the meeting with the coaches week before last, and I was told that had been remedied. I was in Easton yesterday dealing with the school issue, and I wasn't able to get to the field to see what happened since the rains, whether the ants had repopulated it, but I'm sure my sports director would have a more current response for the member.
Colin Anglin, Director of Sports. Mr. Chair, through you. We regularly inspect our facilities. The East End football field is one of our fields that are contracted. And to be honest, we also run a program there. Of course, we have an employee there who runs a program, and they are quite satisfied with the condition of the field. However, we know that, especially when it comes to rain, that field has traditionally produced a problem in terms of ants. And when you want to treat it, once again, that revolves around the weather, because when you're applying pesticides, for example, the strength of it is always diluted if it rains. So if it even looks like it's going to rain, the contractor will hold off on doing so because it would be seen as a waste of money. But anytime that there's an issue, and as soon as we either discover it or it's brought to our attention, we report for that to be rectified. I also, went by the facilities personally, just over the last few days as well, and I'm actually quite happy with what I saw in terms of the condition of the field.
Mr. Chairman, if the director is saying he is satisfied with the field, maybe he could enlighten us, or me, enlighten all of us, if he is satisfied, if the government is satisfied with the donker weed that is in the field, that's what we call it. That's it, donker weed. And the fencing around that field, if that is satisfactory too.
Mr. Chair, through you, I was just referring to the field itself. Now, we also know that it's not uncommon for other types of grass to invade, so to speak. If you're looking at a field, that's not the majority of the field itself. Is it present there from time to time? Of course it is. And we also rectify, we work with the contracted company who also treats it. There are some types of grass that are very invasive and are very difficult to deal with. But overall, as a playing surface, like I said, going once again from the feedback of the players and the people who are there regularly that use it, they actually like that field more than most other fields that are out there in terms of, once again, you're looking at the gradient, you're looking at the texture of the grass, the height of the grass of which is maintained. All of those things may not be a perfect situation, but overall in general, in terms of a field that's being played on, based on our users, our feedback has been positive. In terms of the fencing, we repaired that not too long ago, but once again, because of the high salt content, etc., it's very common for that to start to rust. And so I do agree that does need to be replaced. There are some areas of fencing that need to be replaced. And once again, we have a new budget coming up, so we'll certainly look to get that rectified.
Mr. Chairman, I guess it always depends on another budget. I am going to respectfully invite the minister to come with me so she can see first. There was no reason for her to be there before now, but I'm going to respectfully invite her on a weekend or something when she usually go visit her people up there anyhow. And so that she and I can go there and take a look at it. And besides, we also need to take a look at that basketball court. Then my next question is...
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to accept the invitation. I'm actually on Grand Cayman this weekend. Just a cook turtle meat and breadfruit.
Well, you know, if we cook the turtle meat and breadfruit, some of our good friends could be East End too, so I'll capture both of you.
Member from East End.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I would like to know why they, for many years, the summer football was conducted, camp was conducted by the members of the community, along with government. And over the last few years, none of those people were contacted, the organizers of it. I would like to know what happened, why they weren't asked to be involved or notified that it was being held.
Mr. Chair, through you, traditionally when the Department of Sports runs its camps, it's done through our employees, and then, so in this case, football. And so from there, our football instructors, they already have people in their programs. They give that as a training opportunity to the kids and to the youth in their programs. Once, of course, they're minimum 16, etc. And so from there, they actually choose their assistants. So it's a mixture between Department of Sports staff and also then some assistants, and which are usually, like I said, some youth that we also take that opportunity to give a stipend to be assistant coaches for that. The numbers in terms of East End, it's generally small in terms of the turnout. It's average somewhere between anywhere between 25 and up to 50 maybe kids that will turn up. In terms of advertising, though, we take our flyers to the schools. We distribute them via email. We try to use as many different channels as we can.
Mr. Chairman, I've been involved with this football camp for some 30 years close to it. I have never known of having under 100, not once. I have had to buy every T-shirt. I have had to sponsor that side of it for many years. And there are many people in the district who assisted with it. The older people, Foster's would give us the oranges, and this one would give us that, and what have you. Burger King would give for the last day. Government was involved, but on the scale of providing those assistant coaches for us and the coaches. All of a sudden, we have been removed from it. So, but the difference is that we took a flyer to your house and we got the kids out and we drove around to get them out. Over the last, 2-3 years, I guess. And I don't know the reason why. People like Darrell Rankin and the others up there who were very instrumental in keeping this going has not even been contacted. Has not even been contacted. So I don't know the reason why, but I would respectfully ask the minister to see if the ministry, department, whatever, can get people back and get people involved about hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of balls. In recent times, of government and football association were providing the balls, but we were still doing T-shirts and what have you.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank the member. I certainly will dig into a bit more, but while the football camp is not in operation, we do have an Eastern Football Club that's in operation, and may I take this opportunity to solicit my friend and honorable member from Eastern to assist with the formalization of the executive, because we do have funds still in the TP awaiting to distribute to them, but it will fall away after December. And as to date, they still have not come forward. So I'd be very grateful if he could assist me in that regard.
Mr. Chairman, I consulted with Darrell after the minister spoke to me a week and a half ago or something. And he informs me that a young man is now in charge of it. We have been trying to wrestle that away from the executive now for years. But there is a provision in the FIFA's branch club constitution which says they have to call the meeting. The executive has to call the meeting, and they wouldn't call the meeting. So there's a young man now, and I got his number, and I'm supposed to contact him to see what we can do between him and see how Darrell and I can support him.
Are there any other questions? Member for Georgetown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, can the minister say whether or not the Georgetown Primary School basketball court will be replaced?
I'll ask the chief officer to respond to your question.
Mr. Chair, through you, that item is not on our capital profile for 18-19. It could be addressed through savings and other projects as we go along, and that is an assumption, obviously, but it's not included in the 18-19 profile. Just for clarity, that is an education property, not a sports property.
I asked the question earlier. They told me they wait till I get here. And now I'm here. They're telling me I should have asked it before. Mr. Chair, a follow-up question. The Honourable Minister in the first sitting in the House spoke about assisting the Motor Sports Association with track facilities. Would this be the line item upon which that would be addressed? Or is there another line item for me to look to in respect to that?
Honorable Member, can you please repeat that for the Chief Officer's benefit?
Certainly. Mr. Chair, through you, the Honorable Minister, in the first sitting of the House, made mention to assistance to the Motor Sports Association in respect to assisting them with funding to create a track for their activities. Is this the line item budget, line item that funding for that would be allocated?
Mr. Chair, through you, that item would actually be done as part of the executive budget. I don't have an issue providing an answer now. The item was included and for consideration in terms of our final budget position. It was not included due to the limitation of resources.
Through you, Mr. Chair, so none for 2018 and none for 2019 is my understanding.
Through you, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Would I assume then it was a premature announcement? Because I got the commitment by the minister in the last sitting of the House in respect to assisting the Motor Sports Association. The reason I brought it up is because it was a campaign promise.
Mr. Chairman, with due respect, it was not a premature announcement. It was a legitimate expectation. But as we stand today, it was a realistic cut that they saw necessary at the time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All those in favor?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
just to inquire whether there is any policy, and I don't know, doubt it'll be for this year, but any policy, and it works would be for this year or next even, but any policy on a walking track in West Bay. And there are two likely areas that I would see as possibilities. One would be, or for one, would be the school field, which is it's still widely used, the John Campbell Primary School field, or the 8 Bush Center. As I said, I doubt that there's room for it for this budget period, but if there's any policy, if not, I would like it to be considered.
Mr. Chairman, I am reliably informed that there are 4 schools that require a walking track. There is sufficient money in this 2-year budget for 2, so we'll have to caucus together to decide which of the 2 schools. West Bay is one of the 4 that's there, so a decision could be.
You mean, sorry, but Minister, Mr. Chairman, Minister is talking about government schools now, and you're talking the whole island.
I thought you were referring to the walking track around by the John A. Cumber, that area where people are walking, and I know a request was made from West Bay for that area. That's one of the 4 that's under consideration, and there's sufficient money, Mr. Chair, for 2, so we'll have to get...
But yeah, what I'm inquiring, when you say 2, you mean 2 for our district? No, that's what I said, all island. That's what I'm trying to...
Well, I shouldn't say no, maybe the group will decide that 2 should go in West Bay, but I don't think that would be the decision.
I don't know if I would be so lucky, but that's why as Speaker, I sit in Finance Committee so I can hear those kind of things.
All those in favor of EGA 17, Sports Services, for $4,486,565 in 2018 and $4,522,506 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. EGA 18, Youth Services, $443,351 in 2018 and $439,703 in 2019. Are there any questions? Member for Newlands.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a question. I know that this division of the ministry is tasked with gathering feedback and input from young people. Are we actively getting this feedback and discussing it and trying to include their recommendations and so forth in our plans for the country?
Mr. Chair, I'll ask Ms. Catherine, who's in charge of our sports unit, to respond. And while she's getting herself prepared, I'd just like to put the committee on notice that there is an urgent need for facility or relocation of the youth unit, which I visited, which is still being housed in the Bordentown Civic Center, has a number of issues and problems. So in the interim, we're looking to see whether there are any available Crown property, because we're not in a financial position now to build a purpose-built, or there's no space that we could find available readily, so that members won't, go down that line. Or just say upfront, we are aware that they're in dire need of urgent relocation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank the Minister for paying close attention to that.
Mike.
Catherine Whitaker, Youth Services Unit. Through the chair, could you ask the member to please repeat the question?
Certainly, Mr. Chairman. There's supposed to be a provision where, or a mechanism where the young Caymanians who are involved with youth services are able to give feedback and input by way of reports, research, and so forth, and submit those to government. And have government consider their concerns and so forth going forward in our policy implementation and plans for the country. I think that was one of the most important areas of this creation of this youth services department. So my question is that being done on a regular basis, and what is being done with those reports?
Yes, sir. Through the chair, the mechanism that you're speaking to is the Cayman Islands Youth Assembly. And it was suggested, it was one of the implementation mechanisms from the 2000 youth policy, and it continued with the revision in 2011. It was started in 2007, and it still meets. We're in our 9th sitting. And so it's young people from all the various schools, public and private, and they do 2 papers per year, 2 position papers, which is sent to the ministry. And the ministry has them. They were tabled in 2006 or 2007. And the unit has a number of mechanisms that young people can have their voice heard, such as the radio show, such as the newsletter. So there's a number of mechanisms where we do get young people's feedback. And there's also programming through the various districts, which are sponsored by the ministry itself, that offers young people input as well. But what you're speaking to is the Cayman Islands Youth Assembly.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chairman, through you. My main concern is what is being done when this feedback comes to the ministry. Is it just received and left there? Is it shared, disseminated? What is happening with it?
Mr. Chair, I'll ask Mr. Francis, who's responsible in the ministry, to respond.
Joel Francis, Assistant Chief Officer in the Ministry. The initial practice with the position papers was that they were tabled in this Legislative Assembly. And that went on for several years, and then it didn't after that. They were simply presented to the Minister for his or her consideration and input as they think about policy moving forward.
Thank you. I won't go much further into this, but clearly my concern is that they are tabled in the Legislative Assembly because they contain information that all of us as representatives need to have access to. So I would urge you to find out what broke and please fix it. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, the point is taken on board, and certainly this minister haven't received any yet, but I don't have any hesitation about tabling it into the House.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not sure if Barbara would appreciate that, but I apologize for calling their names. To you, Mr. Chair, can the ministry say, through the minister, how many of the youth programs are Christian-based?
The head of the youth unit will respond, Mr. Chair.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there are 18 organizations that are funded by the Ministry of Youth. Sorry, it's been a while.
It's okay.
And the majority of them are. It would be easier for me to tell you out of the 18 which ones are not Christian-based. And they are as well. For example, the Girls Brigade has a Christian background. Scouts, to some degree, does include spiritual, religious matters. Most of them do. Yeah? There's only one that I can think of that would not be Christian-based. And I don't know if you want me to name that or not.
You don't have to. You don't have
Okay.
to. No. Okay, I think that suffices my question. I just want to make sure that we are continually inputting our foundation of our Christianity through the programs that we do, as well as in the schools. I think that's it, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
All those in favor?
Mr. Chairman? Here.
Okay, go ahead, sir. Sorry, I didn't see you down there.
That's all right.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, just one question on EGA 17. I wonder if there is any provision in this line item for coaches for the primary school sports league, specifically Prospect Primary has been... Oh, forgive me, I lost it. Never mind.
Yeah, we're on EGA 18, Youth Services.
Forgive me, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, I will still undertake to speak to the member offline to hear what the concerns are and see how we can accommodate him.
All those in favor of EGA 18, Youth Services, $443,351 in 2018 and $439,703 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
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 And those against, no. The ayes have it. EGA 20, Management of Land Information and Provision of Surveying Services, $3,817,124 in 2018, $3,663,932 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Member for Georgetown Central.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, Mr. Chair, can the ministry say how evaluators that are certified by government are monitored and regulated?
Mr. Chair, I'll ask the Acting Director for Lands to assume her position in the chair and respond.
Mike.
Sorry, Sophia Williams, Registrar of Lands and Acting Director, Lands and Survey Department. And through you, Chair, I'd also like to extend apologies for Rupert Vasquez, who is unavoidably absent due to a death in his family. The evaluators are with the RICS qualification is usually monitored through the RICS and not by government.
Forgive me for my ignorance. The RICS?
The Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors.
Which is not governed by...
It's not a government body, but it's a private body where the evaluators govern themselves.
That explains everything then. Mr. Chair, through you, can you give a list of how many evaluators are certified by government, or am I assuming wrong that some are and some aren't certified by government, or do they all have to be certified by government in order to do property evaluations in the Cayman Islands?
They are not through you, Chair. They're not certified by government. They're certified through the RICS, which is an international body.
You're 100% right. Through you, Mr. Chair, maybe I am wording it wrongly. Maybe government approved evaluators, because for context, some individuals will go to the bank to buy property, and they have to be certain evaluators that are approved by government. Some aren't, some are. Those ones who are approved by government, is there a criteria for their approval? If I have the wording wrong, forgive me, but if you want to happily clarify it, that's fine.
Through you, Chair, there is a list of government-approved valuers who do transactions with government. We are aware that some banks have adopted our list, but that is purely voluntary on their part.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, through you, in foreclosures in the Cayman Islands, valuations are accepted as evidence for the foreclosure process. Through valuators who govern themselves, does the ministry see a problem with that? Or should I say, Mr. Chair, regulate themselves?
I don't particularly see a conflict with that. I mean, it is an international body that govern themselves. The valuation reports are provided for the foreclosures through the banks, who are under legal obligation to obtain the best possible price when they go to the market.
And who regulates the evaluator to say whether they've done their job right or wrong?
It is regulated by if there are complaints against a valuator, that complaints can be made to the RICS, who can then look at it as an international body to see whether or not there were any contraventions of their rules.
So a regulator could undervalue a person's property, and the only entity to hold them accountable would be this, forgive me the name again,
The RICS, but through your chair, there is facilities, or there is recourse if someone feels that their property has been sold under market through the Grand Courts, for them to avail themselves of a remedy if they think the bank has deliberately sold their property below market value.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair, maybe this should be a suggestion. I think that the government should consider having a body within government to keep a watch or regulate these evaluators, particularly those approved by government, and I dare say anyone that is used in foreclosures should be approved by government and regulated by government. The reason I say that, Mr. Chair, is there's been too much discrepancies on the evaluation of persons' property in foreclosures, and I myself have lived with examples of that. And just for the chair and the ministry to understand, I've had an evaluation done 6 months ago for $600,000. I won't mention the name of the property. And then 6 months later, there's a difference of $300,000 in the evaluation, both by approved evaluators of the Cayman Islands government. That's a 50% difference in the evaluation. That can create a major problem within the foreclosure market. And to say that there's recourse within the courts are too expensive for an average person who is trying to protect themselves to go to the courts. And I think that is something that the government should use as a tool to monitor the foreclosure problems. I'm surprised to hear they're not regulated by government and they're regulating themselves. I think this may actually be one of the reasons why we have so many foreclosures now, or one of the added attributes to potential wrongful foreclosures. And I hope that I can get the blessings of the minister to consider, or to bring it to her caucus, to consider government regulating or keeping a watchful eye on the evaluators, because for too many stories you hear a person's property being devalued and we don't know whether or not the evaluator is in the hands of the banks or anybody else to say, bring the property down by 10% more or another 20% more so I can get it sold. And we hear these horror stories. So I would ask respectfully, through you, Mr. Chair, that the minister consider bringing it to her caucus as something that the government takes on to keep a watchful eye on these evaluators in the Cayman Islands.
Mr. Chair, seeing that my honorable member from Georgetown Central was in a state of amazement and bashfulment about drugs being in the school, and now he's in a state of amazement about the valuation, in spirit of friendliness, I would not wish to keep him in a state of amazement, so I'll be happy to take on board his recommendation to the caucus.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Put this to the vote.
Mr. Chairman, just to underscore, I seldom get into these things, but to underscore the comments being made by my colleague from Georgetown Central, is I have documented proof that someone is taken to the authorities of a valuator who was employed by or asked by a bank to give a valuation on a foreclosure, who later on, after delivering that valuation, which was severely undervalued, put in a bid to purchase the property. Now that's criminal. So this is an issue that we need to really deal with, and I support his call for better regulation.
Member Freeston, you had questions?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Many questions. Mr. Chairman, let me start by asking if evaluations, surveys are signed off by the chief surveyor.
Through you, Chair, the Chief Valuation Officer signs off on government valuations.
Mr. Chairman, I'm asking about when someone comes to register a survey, a survey of register it as precise. does the chief surveyor sign off on that?
Does a member, through you, Mr. Chair, are you talking about a fixed boundary or a general
Fixed
boundary
boundary
survey,
survey.
as
Fixed
opposed
boundary.
to evaluation?
Fixed
proper?
boundary survey. I'm not talking about evaluation. No, they were on that. I'm talking about surveys.
The chief surveyor signs off on the surveys after an independent check. Yes, they do. Through you, Chair.
Mr. Chairman, I wonder if we can be told whether or not there has been instances where they're trying to, private individuals are trying or have ever tried to force the chief surveyor into doing these based on at their women fans are doing it based on it having been done by a private person, and he wants it done, and the chief surveyor is not comfortable with it and refuses.
Through you, Chair. We are aware that the chief surveyor has refused in the past to sign surveys where they do not meet the legal requirements.
Mr. Chairman, can I then ask, since that's the case, that's fine. I'm happy for that. What happens next?
The survey is usually returned to the surveyor, and unless the legal requirements are met, then it is not authenticated.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, I go no further with that. I think I got what I needed because...
But Mr. Chairman, if the member is in possession of information to the contrary, the minister would be more than happy to receive it because it would be in contravention of our laws, and we have an obligation to not.
I was just trying to establish a position with the chief surveyor. What I know next happens outside of his purview and outside of what his responsibilities are. I'll talk to you offline about it.
Okay. All I'm saying that if the information, once assimilated, amounts to a crime within this jurisprudence, then we have a duty to so report.
No, attempts are not necessarily actions, you know, that constitute such. Mr. Chairman, what I want to go to now is things that there appears when 3 years ago, 4 years ago, or thereabouts, we had this interaction here in this committee about hiring a person in the Lansing survey, and there was a particular job about doing a registrar and setting up a project. A project was the focus and the registration of properties and likes. I can't remember the name of it. Has that project been completed?
Through your chair, the project is not completed. It is ongoing. There are several phases of the project, which is actually the e-conveyancing project, which is an attempt to make the land registration process digital.
When is it expected to finish? Mr. Chairman?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we are currently there are several phases of the project. There are different phases of the project. We're currently now putting all the land registry forms online. Several of them, in excess of 20 of those forms have been completed and are now available for customers to use online. The next phase of the project is the digitizing and scanning of the land registry records. We commenced that in January 2016. So all documents submitted since 2016 has been digitized and available digitally. And the second phase of that project is to scan all the registry records from 1973 to 2016. And that contract, a tender document is currently out. We expect that to close sometime this month for an assessment and for that project to continue. So they're different. At the moment, we don't have a definitive date for the project to be completed, but we certainly expect it to be completed within the next 2 years.
Within the next 2 years?
Within the next 2 years.
Pardon me? Few or two?
I said within the next 2 years. There were certain other things that were dependent on the project. A clearinghouse, which was, I now understand that the banks are actively working on that as well. In addition to which, we're also looking for a solution for a digital signature. We have had discussions with the e-government in relation to the digital signature, but a conclusion has not yet been arrived at.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, let me, in the interest of transparency, let me say that I understand that the person who was engaged in that position has been working assiduously to get these things done, and because they're being pulled off constantly is why there has been so much delays in getting the projects done. I have 2 ears too that you can hear, that I can hear. Mr. Chairman, at that time we also talked about that individual was brought in for that project, and they were going to send some people to school to do law degrees. I wonder what the status is on that currently.
Through you, Chair, 2 persons from the Lands and Survey Department are currently on scholarship. One person commenced the scholarship in September 2015. She's expected to complete it in June 2019. The other person commenced this September 2016, and she's expected to complete June 2020.
Wow. And one of those spots, one of those, Mr. Chairman, one of those people who are doing these law degrees going to replace the director? Mr. Chairman, why I ask that is that the Lansing survey a few years ago, everything you needed, you required a law degree. The director now is close to 65, if my calculations are right, based on what we asked him the last time. I know there needs to be a survey. You need to have a degree in survey engineering or whatever it's called. I know that there are people within that department because they went through a vigorous recruitment process to get the chief surveyor. He had climbed up, planted lime trees backwards. And I'm just wondering what is going to happen with the director. Are we going to now push that out, that he doesn't retire, even though we pushed the retirement age out to 65? What is the succession plan, if that's an easier way of looking at it?
Mr. Chairman, through you, as you know, we in this ministry believe strongly in succession planning. And as it relates to our new departments, we will pick it up where we received it post-election. I have been in discussions with the Director for Lands and Survey in terms of talent identification. As the members pointed out, he has members in post, in various posts, senior posts, and he has staff that are undergoing training with an eye to develop them for the post or for succession into higher posts than the post that they're currently in due course. I would not say at this point in time that any particular person or persons have been identified to take the director position once the director moves into retirement.
Mr. Chairman, and I understand this has transferred over from one ministry to the other. But certainly, you don't get 65 in one day. You don't reach 65 in one day. And we're talking about succession plan for others. This was specifically discussed in this finance committee, and commitments were made years ago, 4 years ago, Mr. Chairman. And here we are, not even in the 11th hour, minutes to 12, and there's still no succession, no one identified to take over this position?
Mr. Chairman, just to clarify, in terms of succession planning in the civil service, what the law requires is that at least 2 persons would be identified for every key post. However, just to be absolutely clear, that does not mean that either of those persons will actually get the post, because the post then has to be made available through open recruitment, not promotion. As I said earlier, one of the things that I have discussed with the director is looking at planning and timelines for movements in terms of various posts under his department in order to ensure that Caymanians have the opportunity to succeed. It doesn't mean that in all cases the timeline will be what others might have planned for originally, but as was indicated, we have 2 persons on a succession plan on training right now through degree seeking. I know that there were some delays in terms of those persons taking up the opportunity. And so we have to bear in mind as well, it's not just about us shooting when we say we need to shoot, but for different reasons, staff were not able to take up those opportunities at the time that they were offered and asked for those opportunities to be delayed. So that then necessitates a delay in everything that would come after that.
Yeah, but Mr. Chairman, certainly I don't think we would expect those who are trained in the legal profession to take over the position of director. I certainly would hope that that's not the case. But this smoke screen that we keep putting up in front of Caymanians and people who are in government, that we'll pick you and put you in the succession plan, but there are no guarantees. I've never heard anything like that. But anyway, that's besides the point. Then you got advertise for it, so you find somebody outside that shows more experience, but don't have the experience in government, and you bring them in. That needs to stop. Mr. Chairman.
Member for East End. I've got two other
make him go, but I'm coming back.
Okay, and we need to wrap it up quite quickly too. Member from, and then I'll take you afterwards, member from Bodden West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is this where we discuss street signs and street names? Is this the appropriate place to do that? Okay. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, I have two concerns, or one concern, two examples, but we have some streets in Newlands, one street in Newlands that isn't properly named, and it is nobody's fault. It's just how it happened. The Frank Hall development, when they did the first phase, Nathan Merrin Drive ended, and that was the end of the development. Then they started more houses, and they continued building the road. That road then became Candlewood. So you have one street, one stretch of road, and right down the middle of it, the name changes from Nathan Merrin to Candlewood. There's no signage, there's nothing there. So we had an incident recently where the ambulance was called to someone's home, and they got totally confused and weren't able to find the person's house. I understand something similar may have occurred in another street. That resulted, well, not that didn't result in this, but it contributed to a delay in the ambulance getting to a gentleman who eventually passed away. I won't go into details of that, it's recent. But can we get these, I just need to understand, and I can speak to the chief officer afterwards, how we can get these things rectified quickly, because I think there's a concern primarily for emergency services.
Okay, if we could do it that way, I think that would be most helpful.
One of them is very sensitive, and I wouldn't want to publicly discuss it, but the other one, Candlewood, can we just get a commitment to put that street sign up, please?
Well, Mr. Chairman, is a process. I would ask the member either speak directly to Janet in Lands and Survey, who could assist, and the first step is to find out whether it's a private road or it's a public road, because if it's a private subdivision road, then the proprietor of the subdivision would submit an application for a name variation or change, and oftentimes they submit the names that they would like it to be called, and then it would come to the street naming committee and we would deal with it.
Thank you. In the case of the Frank Hall development, the streets are named. It's just there's no sign up. So that's what resulted in the confusion. The ambulance driver thought he was on Nathan Merrin Drive. He was actually on Candlewood.
Member for Boddentown West.
So Mr. Chair, just to clarify, if it's just a matter of the erection of the signage and stuff, then it would not be Janet. We actually do the approval of the names, but NRA, often it's go down to Public Works and the BRAC, and NRA down here for the erection thereof. So bring it to Paul Parchment's attention.
Okay, thanks. The residents have done that numerous times. That's why I raised it, because they.
Okay, well, when you next see my chief officer, bring it to his attention, and I'm sure he'll take care of it for us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to expand on the point that the honorable member from East End raised, I think it's important to recognize that within the Lands and Survey Department structure, or as with other government department structure, there's a legal title of Registrar of Land, where under the Registered Land Law, that position carries certain responsibilities. And then there is the administrative part, which is the Director of Lands and Survey, which is more an operational type role. So I think if you check the law, you probably won't see the director, but you see the Registrar of Land and then the administrative part. I think from a succession standpoint, it's important that we actually separate the two, because one of the things is that we have spent a lot of time focusing on technical areas within the civil service, but sometimes omit the administrative part of it. And they're basically two different from a management standpoint. So the question is, along that vein, or rather my first question is, along that vein, is the ministry taking that approach, or is that you're trying to find two-in-one type situation?
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, just so I'm clear, is the member asking about recruitment for, or future recruitment for the director post?
It wouldn't be just the director itself, but I mean, same thing as environmental health. You can have a chief environmental health officer, and then there's also the director of environmental health. So there's an administrative post, and then there's a legal post. So I could understand when you're asking for a registrar of lands to have a degree in this day and age, considering the legality that goes with transferring property, making sure everything is done right and everything else. I can understand that to some extent, but there is still the administrative part. And the reason why I am raising that, sir, through you, Mr. Chairman, is that when you look at the government revenue with regards on page 361 with regards to revenue, and I see in 2015, 2016, roughly $53 million worth of for stamp duty at 7.5%. That's in excess of $700 million worth of land transfer. And you look for the budget for 2018, you see $45 million. So you're talking about $600 million worth of land transfer. And then also the next year, with $40 million, there's roughly over $500 million worth of land transfer that the government is expecting. So from that standpoint, just to put things clear, if we have that much business being submitted or that much value of business being submitted to Lands and Survey, I would really want to make sure that somebody competent is looking at $700 million because that is still a lot of property that is being transferred. Now, the next issue, and the reason why this is important for us is that roughly almost 30 years ago, Lands and Survey was pretty much the second largest revenue earner for government behind customs. Maybe some years companies would have probably overtaken them. Now they have been pushed down completely. And the reason why I'm raising this issue is that in addition to just the land transfer, there are also a lot of different services that Lands and Survey provides to the community with regards to maps, with regards to information, especially on land information and everything else. And at one point, the Cayman Islands was at the most advanced land system in the entire Caribbean. If not, I wouldn't even go further to probably say one of the most advanced systems in the world. We had people leaving from the Cayman Islands and going to other places to train people on our system. So naturally, when I see other people coming in now and running our system when we're supposed to be the best at it, it kind of sends, it kind of sends little alert bells up. So from that standpoint, what I'm trying to figure out now, from the Lands and Survey standpoint, and seeing where it has dropped now over several years, is what now, or what are the plans that the ministry and the department have in place to get Lands and Survey back now to really start providing real cutting-edge information, especially like, the aerial photographs, the maps, and everything else. Now, what is the plan for that?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, the member mentioned aerial photography, and just I'll start there. We do have plans to do an aerial photography project next year. As the acting director spoke about, we are moving forward with the e-conveyancing. I take the member's point. I believe I understand the member's point in that Lands and Survey needs to be positioned as a 21st century entity and needs to be looking at future development of its services to enhance customer service, grasp hold of technology, and ensure that people are a right fit for the post that they're serving in. I am happy to report that the discussions that I've had with the director so far are definitely along those lines in terms of strengthening Lands and Survey's presence as a service provider. And there are some ideas that we have been brainstorming. I won't go into them in Finance Committee because they have not been pitched to the minister yet. But in terms of strengthening the HR aspect of the department, each post should stand on its own merit. Each job description should be written properly, and each job description should require the qualifications and experience needed to be successful at that post. And each candidate should then be judged against that job description. And so the idea that because a person has been in a technical role for a while, but has some longevity, would automatically qualify them to be the director, for example, that would not be the case, because we have to take the responsibility in the ministry and in the department that if we want our staff to have a chance at the higher positions, we have to train them. So we have to offer them management training, leadership training. We have to offer them training in the areas that they're not strong in. So the member spoke about revenue. If that means that we have to offer training to our staff in terms of financial management, then we do that to get them prepared to apply and be successful in application for future jobs. That's really what succession planning is about. So that's the plan that we will be structuring for, not just for Lands and Survey, but for each department under the ministry going forward over the next few years.
I put it to the vote. All those in favor of EGA 20, Management of Land Information and Provision of Surveying Services, $3,817,124 in 2018, and $3,663,932 in 2019. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. EGA 21, Agriculture Support and Regulatory Services, $5,068,455 in 2018, $5,089,851 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Just one question, Mr. Chairman. Oh, sorry.
Member?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just I noticed that this vote pulls from AGR 33, AGR 34, and AGR 35 on the budget statement output. And I noticed on page 642 that there were some programs concerning training for farmers, educational activities amongst youth, and also educational activities amongst adults. I noticed there was no metric for the current year, so I'm wondering if this was a new initiative that was being started by the department. Page 642, budget statements. On the quantity, services for the development of the agricultural sector.
Mr. Chair, the Director of Agriculture will respond.
Adrian Eswick, Director of Agriculture. Through you, Mr. Chair. I'm looking at the section that the member is speaking of on 642. Okay, this is under the support for development of agricultural sector. Okay. And you're saying that in 2016, 2017?
Yeah, I'm asking if this is a new initiative because I noticed there was no metric from the prior one.
Okay, in this year we have consolidated and changed some of the areas how the outputs have been written, so that quantity measure that you would have seen not applicable for the year we are in is just that actual wording was not used this year, and it's used in the 18 and the 19.
Okay.
It's not that it's an absolute change; it has been tweaked, and there are areas there that the ministry asked us to flesh out, and we rewrote things. So you wouldn't have a metric that you would be able to compare to straight here.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chairman, again. One of the, just to kind of give an idea of where I'm going with my questions is, I remember looking at the compendium of statistics, and when I noticed the number of farmers, it was either flat in some cases, year on year, or decreasing. And one of the things I would like to know is what plans does the ministry or the department have in place that we can start encouraging more people to get into the farming, because we have a lot of farmers who are quite elderly now, and I'm a little bit worried that when most of them go, that or retire, I should say, we have sufficient stock at least, or sufficient people interested at least to carry on the farming tradition.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, the promotion of the agricultural sector would be addressed when the ministry has promised to look closer at the National Food Nutrition and Security Program, and in that draft would have areas how you would address increasing the farmer population on the island. But presently, the Cayman Islands Agricultural Society, that arm that lobbies for the agricultural sector, they are making strides to actually promote the interests among the population of the Cayman Islands, and especially at the youth level, you know, to get the interest up among those in agriculture.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I also just want to publicly thank the minister also. There's one program that we're looking at with the excess properties that the government have, where we're looking to start a farm program. It's something I've spoken to the Honorable Minister about, and she's quite supportive of it, both in Boddentown East and the Boddentown West community, for those parcels of land. So I just want to publicly thank her for that.
Member from Savannah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question, or two actually. The containers on Agricola Drive, I see they finally start to put them in. What's happening behind that area where you leveled off?
The problem that the reason why we had to put the containers on Agricola Drive during this time was the area where the warehouse is that outside area was being refurbished. They had fill and some concrete works, and therefore, that project took an extended amount of time, a lot of interruptions with the weather, and we did have the containers on the road, and we had to get some reflective cones from NRA to assist so that they wouldn't have caused any undue alarm or an accident. We did get the communication from you, sir, and we thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's your feeling about the chickens and the iguana infestation?
It's one that the iguana invasive species, it's a problem, a national problem, and but it's being handled by the Department of Environment. Over the years, there have been some inroads. The chicken population, it's unfortunate that a lot of persons in the past purchased young chicks, and as they got older, they sort of released them in the wild, and that has caused a problem. Our department has spent numerous hours assisting persons to trap the chickens, and we also offer the sale of traps to assist with that.
Member for East End.
Really, we got a chicken problem? When I was growing up, there were plenty more chicken than there are now. Mr. Chairman, what I would like to ask about is the importation of livestock. I think for many years we have talked about trying to uplift the livestock breed in this country, and I know recently we brought in some heifers and steers. Now I want to know how you will uplift your stock, your breed stock with steers.
through you, Mr. Chair, to the member from East End, that the last two importations weren't for the increase of the breeding stock, as you rightfully said. The very last one were some steers and the other one those were to facilitate animals that would be in for a while and then pass through the slaughter process. What was the plan of the Agriculture Society, sir, was that a future shipment would then address that of wants to upgrade the stock, and that will work in conjunction with the artificial insemination program to upgrade the stock. But those two earlier ones were not about improving the breed.
Mr. Chairman, my only question is, we have been talking about upgrading the stock for a very long time, and we go and buy steers and don't buy any bulls. That's what I'm saying, because the steers, you build the stock and drop it back down by Christmas, because you kill them, you slaughter them. So when are we going to see an upgrade, like the member said, the director said? I suspect that's the next phase. When is that expected?
Mr. Chairman, in response to the honourable member from Eastern, the minister have been in some discussions as to how we can assist the farmers, and there were like 2 trains of thoughts, whether we'd give it through a grant to the society or whether through the department. My preference is through the Department of Agriculture, and we'll have to look for savings to be able to do that, because there's not a particular line item in this budget. I understand it'll cost like $150,000. So we've tasked the chief officer to put his head together with the director of agriculture and myself to see how we can best do that. If not, we will have to resort, fortunately or unfortunately, to 11.5 because it did not meet within the restraints that we had, but we believe it's something that has to be done to continue on the
Member from East End, I'm going to allow one more question, and then I'm going to allow one more question from you, and then I'm going to put this to the vote. Okay?
Mr. Chairman, okay. I shall bow to your rule, and sir, you're in charge.
Thank you, sir.
But I know it was proposed a long time ago that we put aside monies to purchase livestock, whether it's cattle, goat, or whatever it was. And the minister's right. I am supporting going through the department. That has been not supported, in my view, over the years, because they keep saying that when the farmers come, they want to credit the livestock and then don't pay back. Well, you don't take it off the compound unless you pay. That's simple. I would like, and if it's $150,000, fine. But the $150,000 keeps rolling. And every time you bring in 40 cows off that, you get paid back. And then you use 150 again. That 150 go on in perpetuity. But we go and give the Agriculture Society $75,000 and they bring in stairs.
Mr. Chairman,
Minister?
we have noted what the honourable member from Easton has said, and obviously it has to be fleshed out, but we give an undertaking to so do.
Member from Georgetown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I have a concern that I've heard on the radio quite often. I don't know if the department has a position on it, but many members from West Bay constituencies have concerns about persons who have a business that deals with horses, and that the horses do tours and they leave the mess behind. I'm not sure if it's a possibility that this administration could take on a concept or a regulation quite like the UK, where they're forced to have bags attached to the back end of them to collect the waste, because though I know it's good for the soil, sometimes it's not good for the members in the community, particularly because they roam the beaches and the like. Is that a regulation, and would it be something that can be considered if this is the department that deals with that? I'm just only thinking from an animal perspective.
Mr. Chair, certainly this can be a united effort between the Department of Environmental Health and our Department of Agriculture. So I thank the member for his bringing it to our attention.
All those in favor of EGA 21, agricultural support and regulatory services, $5,068,455 in 2018, $5,089,851 in 2019. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. CCO1, Teaching of Tertiary Level Professional and Vocational Programs, $4,217,000 in 2018 and $4,217,000 in 2019. Are there questions? Member for Georgetown.
Is this the opportune time for that list to be provided now? Or did we say we would present it in writing at a later date? I wasn't at a later date? Okay, sorry, Mr. Chair, I retract this question.
Yeah,
Member
Mr. Chairman.
from Bontown West.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you, sir. I noticed that this funding to UCC has remained flat year on year, and I'm just curious to know, one, if they have any plans to, I guess, pay the teachers more, and if so, with the funding remaining flat, is it then based on expected increase in enrollment? I just think we should be paying good money to make sure we get the right people working inside there to encourage more people.
Mr. Chair, is he talking about UCCI teachers or teachers generally?
No, well, UCCI, because we are on UCCI. The other teachers we already spoke about. Thank you, Madam Minister. No, it's just that I noticed the funding had remained flat. And I'm just curious in terms of, I know there have been cuts throughout the government, especially with regards to salaries. And we are a consumption-based society, so it is important in terms of income keep rising to keep up with the cost of living. So since with the funds being flat, is it then expected that if the staff is paid more, that it would be based on increased enrollment?
Mr. Chairman, through you, first of all, in terms of salaries, while the while the ministry is not directly involved in setting salaries at UCCI, occasionally there are questions around cost of living adjustments and wholesale reviews of salaries. What has been decided in terms of central policy to do with mass rises and falls of salaries, that the entire public service would move together. And so we would not look to do mass wholesale salary movements. In terms of the funding being stagnant, we do provide as much funding to UCCI as we can. In recent years, this value is actually an increase over previous years. And UCCI is, as I said, developing other proposals to come back to us. They've recently worked on their strategic plan, which I'm sure the chairman can speak to more eloquently than I can, in terms of restructuring the university and taking it to the next level. Portions of the funding that we make available to UCCI are dependent upon delivery of certain programs, certain types of programs. So we, as we look to add those programs, more funding will be made available to the university. We do recognize that we want to fund the university to as great of an extent as possible, and it is a struggle in terms of funding them, and also keeping university costs down, as you know, is very difficult. So it is problematic to try to fund the university, and also in keeping our costs in terms of scholarships down.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
Oh my God, I lost my
Member
frame
for
of
Georgetown,
thought.
please proceed with your question.
Yes. Sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I put the question.
Over here. Sorry, Mr. Chair. I had lost my memory there for a minute. In respect to a matter that is related, in my opinion, related to the UCCI, was a suggestion by the member from East End in respect to A levels. And I just want to make a point that maybe the education department may want to take on. I don't think it's a wise concept for us to go to A level perspective simply on the basis that the A level value is basically exactly the equivalent to the associate's degree program at UCCI. And however far the A level grade credits can give you, the associate's degree level can give you as much. And it avoids us having to put more pressure on the infrastructure that we have in the high school system right now, and better utilizing the infrastructure that we have at UCCI and continuing to grow and develop our university. So forgive me, Mr. Chair, it's not really a question, but more so to say, to give the government support to continue that transition out of high school into the university rather than developing the A levels. Because I think, unless somebody can disagree with me from an educational position, the A levels and the associate's degree are practically give you the same level of credit from an educational standpoint. And there's more facilities available at the college and higher professionals, I dare say, than the teachers in the high school to give a higher level of education.
Member from East End.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I need to ask the minister. We know Mall Road, but there seems to be some traction, so to speak, to it. What is happening at the University College? Why is it that we're hearing about this exodus of staff?
Mr. Chairman, if it's happening, I have not been made aware of it.
Can we inquire into it? Because I know one high executive just left and went over to, what's his name? To the port. Recently, I understand the IT person was fired. Is the ministry aware of this? I guess not.
This is the first I'm hearing it, but if it was just one Unless his name was Moses, I wouldn't term it Exodus.
Well, what may I just say, Madam Minister? Watch out for when the staff strike the rock, water will fall.
When Moses struck, it went the other opposite
Okay,
direction.
you watch even. You be careful, don't drown you this time.
I'm an avid swimmer, my friend.
Me too. No, I don't know. What I was asking, Mr. Chairman, was to repeat it. There seems to be a number of people leaving the UCCI, those in the administration. I wonder if, I guess the minister will get the chairman to answer it, but I wonder if the board knows anything about it.
Mr. Chairman, Lemuel Hurlston, Chairman of the Board of Governors. There has been some turnover of staff, but there's nothing that is to be alarmed about. The contract for the IT manager expired and was not renewed. We lost the services of an HR manager, which was rather regrettable because that was a new position that had just been created, and the person left for a better opportunity elsewhere. So we've not had an exodus of senior management, but we do have to replace what we have lost.
Sorry, Mr. Chairman, sorry. We need to get more government members back inside here, Mr. Chairman. We have no quorum. And the opposition is all here and the government is missing.
Mr. Chairman, while I'm such in a good mood this afternoon, I want to thank my honorable friend from Boddentown for bringing it to the attention to you that we don't have a quorum, but that's also an innuendo that they won't exercise their political might and put a vote and outvote the government. Thank you so much for your generosity, sir.
That is correct. Absolutely. That shows how reasonable we are. Mr. Chairman,
if you continue with your questions.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I would like to, since the president chairman of the board of directors has said that there's no exodus, just replace turnover. I wonder if, seeing that the UCCI over the years has been subsidized by government and stuff, is UCCI financially stable? Is it liquid with all its everything in place, pensions, debt, it is serviceable and stuff?
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to say that UCCI is currently in a very stable financial position. We did have to take on some extraordinary debt like other authorities in government, particularly with regard to pension liability. But we are managing that. And the latest financial statement that the board received indicated that thus far in this 18-month financial year, we are in excess of $800,000 in the black. So the institution is financially stable, and we are delivering on all of the programs that are in the ownership agreement.
Okay. Do we have any investigations going on up there by audit or anything?
I am aware that there was an irregularity that was brought to the attention of the auditors recently, and that matter is being pursued from an audit perspective, yes.
Mr. Chairman, that's internal audit we're talking about.
No, that is the Auditor General's office that does the independent audit annually.
Okay, I thought it was the audit office of government. It's
No,
just saying.
Not the internal audit.
Okay. Certainly, we don't want to delve into that, right? To question who, why, where, how.
Mr. Chairman, any issue arising from that will come about as a result of the audit itself, and so we need not go into that here.
No, I am of the same view, but I trust that it will be. I'm sure the Auditor General will take it to its fullest extent. Mr. Chairman, I am going to leave some of these things here and wait for the Auditor General, you see.
All those in favor of CCO1, Teaching of Tertiary Level Professional and Vocational Programs, $4,217,000 in 2018, $4,217,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. CDB1, Disbursement of Government Scholarship Funding, $40,451 in 2018, $40,451 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Aye.
If there are no questions, all those in favor of CDB1, Disbursement of Government Scholarship Funding, $40,451 in 2018 and $40,451 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. NGS 24.
Aye.
Spaying and neutering of dogs and cats, $43,000 in 2018 and $43,000 in 2019. Are there any questions? All those in favor of NGS 24, spaying and neutering of dogs and cats, $43,000 in 2018, $43,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against? No. The ayes have it. NGS 25, teaching of tertiary education courses, $90,000 in 2018 and $90,000 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Aye.
All those in favor of NGS 25, teaching of tertiary education courses, $90,000 in 2018, $90,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. NGS 34, primary and secondary education by private schools, $1 million in 2018, $1 million in 2019. Are there any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Member from Georgetown.
Mr. Chair, forgive me, and by all means, I don't want to seem biased, but through you, Mr. Chair, can the department and through the minister explain why we're funding the private schools? I know there must be a good, legitimate reason, but as far as I understand, the private schools are for profit. But I've never been known why we fund them, considering the fact they're for profit. A simple explanation will do. By all means, I'm quite sure it's justified.
Through you, Mr. Chair, there has been historical support of private schools by government for many years. Most private schools are not-for-profit entities. There are one or two that are for-profit. And then as we move forward through, in implementing the education law, there'll be a further distinction in terms of supported schools versus independent schools. So supported schools would get government funding, independent schools would not. Currently, the Caymanian role at private schools is about 52.3%. So 52% of students enrolled at private school are Caymanian. The funding that is being provided to private schools is being provided to support education of students, and particularly Caymanians in those institutions. Mr. Chairman, it comes down to what would be the alternative if those private schools did not exist and we had to educate them, the students in the public system. The spend on educating in the public system, including the build and construction, would be significantly more than the subsistence that we provide to the schools.
Mr. Chair, through you, thank you for that answer. It's a legitimate answer. My only follow-up question would then be, with the fact that government, the public purse is paying for or funding in some capacity some of those schools, how do we balance that with the ability for some of those schools, the ones who are getting funding, to deny some of our students? I know that the ministry has had to deal with the difficulty of dealing with the bulk of educational problems, so to speak, because the private schools are willing to turn them away, which makes their numbers look better than the public schools who have to deal with the difficult issues. But yet still we fund them. Under the fact that we fund them, how do we balance that fact that they can technically turn away a Caymanian even though if they're paying for it? How do we balance that? What's the perspective on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, though they are not-for-profit entities historically, any private entity is able to determine its clientele. And so, yes, private schools are able to use entrance exams and enforce behavior standards that are not available to public schools, because then they can completely expel a child, and then the child would come to us. So historically, we have not melded the two. We've funded them in terms of keeping their doors open and providing education for Caymanians in a private setting, and we've left them alone in terms of their right to set their own standards for entry and for students being enrolled. However, under the new education law, there are requirements built into that law that we will be fleshing out and delivering to private schools in terms of expectations that government would have of all schools in the Cayman Islands, regardless of funding, public or private. And so things like certain items of the curriculum that need to be delivered, for example, Caymanian civics would need to be taught in all schools in the country, but also having some measure of SEN provision. And we understand SEN provision is expensive, but we do expect that all schools in the country would have some measure of SEN provision in their schools.
Mr. Chair, not a question, but last one, yeah. I don't want the public to think by any means am I picking on the private schools, but I think it's important that we all understand the reasoning behind it, because this is $1 million of the public's purse. And sometimes people don't get the reasoning behind it and think that, there's a bit of a bias between kids who have money and those who don't. So I think it's important that we educate everybody, because even me, myself, wasn't fully aware of the understanding behind it. So hence the reason for the question, and I do appreciate it. Through you, Mr. Chair.
NG, all those in favor of NGS?
Mr. Chairman, one question. The distribution of this $1 million to the different schools, is it an equal amount or it varies?
Mr. Chair, through you, the first tranche is equal. Each school will get an equal amount of the funding. The second tranche is based on school numbers. But I will say that too is one of the things that we will be reviewing with Education Council in order to advise the minister on how best to proceed.
So just following up, the reason why I asked that question, through you, Mr. Chairman, is that I look at the schools now that offer the year 12 and year 13 sixth form, in that we have now given, with the government exiting that business, the government are given set high schools a steady stream of income by not having sixth form. So from that standpoint, I would expect that those schools are now benefiting from the government exiting the sixth form business or providing sixth form services, is that the other schools that are struggling would basically be able to get more funding, because right now it's really not, it technically shouldn't be equal, because they're making good money from charging for sixth form kids. So they should be able to have a little bit more room, and maybe some school that actually need the help should be able to get more help.
Mr. Chairman, through you, that is the idea, that we would look to ensure that we are maintaining equity. Currently, just so that everyone is clear, currently we have an arrangement with the Private Schools Association, and so the funding goes to members of the Private School Association. Under the new education law, that would be reviewed, and we would be looking at schools on a case-by-case basis, and in order to ensure equity and to ensure that schools that need the support get it.
Mr. Chairman, to the minister, that $1 million in one particular case is hand in, hand back. And that's the prep school on Smith Road. It's time now we get rid of this building and bequeath it to prep school. We get, what is, $2,000 a month off it, and we still got to do maintenance, and we got to be prepared for hurricane and the likes. At the time when it was done, it might have been viewed as a good political idea. But we got propped at it that we getting $2,000 off, and we still got to do so much to keep it up.
Mr. Chairman, it seems like my friend from East and I speak to the same individual about certain things, and I can say that the individual that we often speak to, I've given him the mandate to start the discussions because I'm in full support of what the minister just said.
Great minds think alike.
All those in favor of NGS 34, primary and secondary education by private schools, $1 million in 2018 and $1 million in 2019. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. NG 47, mentoring Cayman program, $9,000 in 2018, $9,000 in 2019. All those in favor of NGS 47, mentoring Cayman program, $9,000 2018 and $9,000 2019. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. NGS 58, elite athletes program, $79,000 in 2018, $79,000 2019. Any questions? If there are no questions.
Mr.
all in
Chairman,
favor?
just a quick one. How many individuals do we now have who qualify as elite athletes in our on this program?
Mr. Chair, currently 2.
Are there, thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you, are there any plans to add additional, or we're just going to stay at 2? Based on the numbers I'm seeing here, it looks like we're staying at 2.
Mr. Chairman, these are the 2 that currently qualify, but through our TPs, we have an athlete development program that we can almost do the same thing.
Okay. I just check in to make sure we had some provision in case.
And of course, from time to time, those who currently qualify don't necessarily mean that it's a continuous qualification.
Thank you.
All those in favor of NGS 58, elite athletes program, $79,000 in 2018 and $79,000 in 2019. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. NGS 59, youth development programs, $199,000 in 2018, $199,000 in 2019. Any questions?
One question.
Chairman?
Member from West Bay.
West Bay West.
West Bay West. Okay. I'll just refer to you to Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Chairman, can the minister say whether the building in which the scouts are in, is that still being shared also by the Girls Brigade? And is government still doing the maintenance on that building? And I'm not sure whether that is a correct vote, but because you got one under TP 30 also, Mr. Chairman. But if not under this one, then under the next one.
Mr. Chair, through you, the ministry funds all three organizations historically through the TP. We have been approached by the Scouts Association to tour the building, and they did explain to us that they were in discussions with Girl Guides and Girls Brigade to come into the building with them. And the purpose of that tour was a request made by Scouts to increase funding in order to help them covering the operating costs of the building. And we have taken that under consideration, and will advise as soon as a final decision has been made on it.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman. So what the Chief Officer is saying is that it's only the Scouts there now. The Girls Brigade is not there, not shared by the other organizations.
Through you, Mr. Chair, what we were told, our meeting was with the Scouts Association. So what they explained to us was that they had discussions with Girl Guides and Girls Brigade for both of them to come into the building. Now, I cannot confirm which one. I don't want to say on the mic which one, but there was an actual fit out in the building that was designed by one of those organizations. I believe it was the Girls Guides. Girls Brigade, sorry. So I'm guessing that they have confirmed to the Scouts that they're going to be in the building.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
One question. Through you, Mr. Chair, these programs, these youth development programs, they go through the summer camps as well?
Mr. Chairman, through you, this vote, the items under this vote would be funding of the Cadet Corps Committee, the Scouts Association, the Youth Development Consortium, Duke of Edinburgh International Award, Girls Brigade, Girl Guides, National Youth Commission, the Savannah Seventh-day Adventist Gideon Pathfinders, the West Bay Seventh-day Adventist Light Bearers, and Youth Act or Youth Anti-Crime Trust.
Thank you.
All those in favor of NGS 59, Youth Development Programs, $199,000 in 2018, $199,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. NGS 60, Sports Programs, $721,400 in 2018 and $721,400 in 2019.
Mr. Chair.
Member for Georgetown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, is the CFA still receiving funding from government under the current circumstances that is surrounded the association?
No, Mr. Chair. They are not receiving funding from government.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Follow-up question. Is there any foreseeable solution to what's covering it right now, why it's not getting funding? Because unfortunately, what I think many of us would agree on is that funding that does help directly the students and the kids that go or get the benefit of CFA is now indirectly being affected in a negative way as a result of, for lack of better terminology, the scandal surrounded by it. Do we see an end to that sometime soon, that we can reinstitute that funding to continue to help our young football players in the Cayman Islands?
Mr. Chairman, I am reliably informed that they're currently undergoing a forensic audit, and upon the conclusion thereof, we'll be in a better position to so assess.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All those in favor of NGS 60, Sports Programs, $721,400 in 2018 and $721,400 in 2019. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. NGS 76.
Aye.
Are members happy for me to take these one votes?
Yeah, I'm fine with me.
I don't want to deprive anyone, but just give me some indication, please, if you're happy for us to take the four of them.
My what?
Mr. Chairman, I propose that we take NGS 76, 79, 82, and 84 in a block.
Okay. All those in favor of NGS 76, Cayman Islands Red Cross, $25,000 in 2018 and $20,000 in 2019. NGS 79, K9 Security Services for $50,000 in 2018 and $50,000 in 2019. NGS 82, Other Sports Programs, $108,000 in 2018, $108,000 in 2019. And NGS 84, Cayman Islands Agricultural Society, $30,000 in 2018 and $30,000 in 2019, all standing part of the schedule to the bill. Please say aye.
Mr. Chairman.
And those against, no?
Mr. Chair.
Mr. White, Councillor White had a question.
Pardon?
No, I just wanted to ask a question on NGS 82.
I already put it to the vote.
Okay. No problem, no problem.
Those against?
Give him answer the question. Ask the question.
Mr. Chairman, they voted, and if you wouldn't mind, since he's been here all the time, he's an excellent councillor, I would ask your indulgence. So
I will grant me indulgence. And
no, man, we done a petty. Come on, allow him to ask the question.
Mr. Chairman, you'll have the support of the opposition.
Thank you very much.
Providing that it's understood that this is not establishing a precedent, then I'll let you go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, through you, and as long as the member from East End doesn't say anything. No, you don't, yeah. I would like to make a comment and then ask through you the minister a question. First of all, I would like to make a comment, and a lighthearted comment. I'm being bombarded with pictures taken from the picture from the camera with the speaker and I, and asking if the world is coming to an end. But I want to, I got to look and see if the member of East End didn't send me one of them pictures and ask that question.
Mr. Chairman, no, he can't do that.
It was
no, he cannot do that. He needs to withdraw it.
I withdraw
right
it.
now.
I know you're sitting right there, and I know you never did it.
You know, this was my fear.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to just...
I'm going to make a comment. I'm asking... One of the goals of the national sports policy is to increase the value on sports, recreation, and physical well-being. I was happy to see that sport is being recognized as part of the National Heroes Day 2018. I would like, through you, to ask the minister, can the minister say if there is a plan to recognize and celebrate our sporting achievements on an ongoing basis through a Sports Hall of Fame and/or an annual sports award?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank the Honourable Council for his remarks, and also to say that having had the privilege to meet with all of our coaches, I think about a week and a half ago to 2 weeks, and after hearing their woes and actually witnessing big men and women crying because of being the feeling that they had been put on the back burner and that they were a forgotten entity. The councillor and the House have the undertaking that this government will do everything within its possibilities to ensure that they're continued recognized beyond January of next year, which would entail an appropriate Hall of Fame and an annual reception for our sports athletes. We are strong believers and proponents that sports is one of those wonderful commodities, save and except religion. It has the ability to bind communities together across the whole social spectrum, and we are endeavoring to carry out that mandate.
TP 27, preschool educational assistance, $705,800 in 2018 and $704,140 in 2019. Any questions?
Mr. Chair.
Member for Georgetown.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Through you, can the ministry say whether that is equally distributed amongst all preschools in the Cayman Islands?
The Chief Officer will respond, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, through you, that funding is not for preschools. It is for parents of preschool-age children. So it's distributed among based on application and qualification.
My apologies. I should have known that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All in favor of TP 27, preschool educational assistance, $705,800 in 2018 and $704,140 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. TP 30, local and overseas scholarships and bursaries, $11,696,000 in 2018 and $11,696,643 in 2019. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Through
Member
you,
for
sir.
West Bay.
You put me in West Bay
Town.
again? Mark, you try and get me to come West Bay. So.
Member for Bodden Town, please proceed.
I agree. Yeah. Through you, Mr. Chairman, I noticed the annualized cost for this has dropped by more than $257,000. And I'm just curious, is there a reduction in the number of scholarships being granted, or I'm just trying to understand why the decrease?
Mr. Chairman, through you, I understand the question to be a question around a drop in the value of the scholarship vote.
That is correct. I noticed it dropped by more than $250,000, so I was just curious what was driving the decrease.
Mr. Chairman, what it really represents is a restructure of scholarships. We have pulled the SEN scholarships out and given it its separate vote. And we've also created a medical specialization scholarship as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just currently, how many students do we have on scholarship right now?
Mr. Chair, we crave your indulgence for the Secretary to get those numbers.
Mr. Chairman, local scholarships of about 900 and overseas about 750.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, as per previous discussions with regard to the business staffing plans and scholarship obligations, can I have a commitment from the minister to please liaise with the Immigration Board to find out if there are any outstanding obligations in business staffing plans and work towards having those transferred into this scholarship pool so that Caymanians can now start taking advantage of them if they're not being able to. My estimation is it could be as much as $10 million a year.
Mr. Chair, I won't give an undertaking to speak to the Immigration Board because that's not the way I operate, but I will give an undertaking to speak to the minister responsible for immigration to see how we can take it forward.
Mr. Chairman, maybe the member has, from Newlands, has forgotten, but we went through this extensively when I was examined in this finance committee earlier, and I explained that the system now is not working properly. We know that, we acknowledge that, and a big part of what we're trying to do with the move to the HR department is to be able to effectively address these sort of issues. We also talked about in case he's forgotten, the need for what I acknowledge is reform of the business staffing plan, system, regime as well. So the undertaking about addressing this has already been given on behalf of the government by myself to the member who was asking the question again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and just to assure the member, I haven't forgotten. I just recognize that sometimes the government needs reminding. Thank you.
All those in favor of TP 30, local and overseas scholarships and bursaries, $11,696,000 in 2018 and $11,696,643 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. TP 49, youth programs and other non-governmental organizations, $141,000 in 2018, $141,000 in 2019. Other questions?
Mr. Chair,
There are no.
One question. Can you tell me, do we have identified the non-governmental organization already? I mean, is there a list? Is this a number of organizations? One particular one? Just a little bit of facts.
Through you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, these are ongoing government support of various programming, delivering youth services to various churches and organizations around the country. I can list them out. Well, I will short a list. Church of God, Frank Sound, Church of God, Town Hall, Wesleyan Holiness Church, John Gray Memorial Church, Wesleyan Holiness, Elmsley Memorial, Stake Bay Baptist Youth Group, Fellowship Baptist Church, Crossroads United Church, St. Ignatius Church, the New Self-Help Community Foundation, and Savannah United.
So that's a total of 12, I heard?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Through you, Mr. Chair, follow-up. So it's assumed that $141,000 is divided equally amongst them?
Through you, Mr. Chairman, it is not divided equally. There are three funding levels. The first is $7,125 a month. The second is $9,000. Sorry. Per year. Sorry, Mr. Chairman. The second is $9,025 per year, and the third is $11,875 per year. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There's 6 organizations receiving the $7,000 value. There are 3 receiving the $9,000 value, and there are 3 receiving the $11,000 value.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One last follow-up. Can you give us the criteria for a church that wanted to apply for that? How would they apply for it, and what would they have to, what criteria they have to meet in order to get it?
Mr. Chairman, in the interest of time, the document is called the General Youth and Sport Development Grant, and we will provide a copy. There's a checklist of items that form the criteria. We'll provide a copy to members.
All in favor of TP 49, youth programs and other non-governmental organizations for $141,000 in 2018 and $141,000 in 2019, standing part to the schedule of the bill. Please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. TP 51. TP 51, other educational and training assistance, $359,000 in 2018, $344,000 in 2019. Questions? There are no questions. All those in favor of TP 51, other educational and training assistance, $359,000 2018 and $344,000 in 2019. Standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. TP 61, student enrichment and support services, $580,000 in 2018, $580,000 in 2019. Questions? No. Can you speak into the microphone, sir?
You're going to take a block vote on the remaining items, Mr. Chairman?
And the remaining?
The remaining items in that section.
The TP items?
Yeah.
Members happy to do that? I'll be happy to oblige. I put it to the vote. All those in favor of TP 61, student enrichment and support services, $580,000 in 2018, $580,000 in 2019. TP 72, other youth and sports program assistance, $558,475 in 2018, and $579,475 in 2019. TP 82, scholarships, special education needs, $600,000 in 2018, $700,000 2019. TP 83, scholarships, medical, $500,000 in 2018, $500,000 2019, and TP 84, grants to farmers, $16,000 2018, $16,000 2019. All standing part to the schedule of the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. OE 11, subscription to Caribbean Examination
Mr.
Council.
You can go ahead and block.
You can do a block vote for that one too, Mr. Chairman.
Happy to account. Thank you very much. All those in favor of OE 11, subscription to Caribbean Examination Council, $13,457 in 2018, $13,457 in 2019. OE 12, University of the West Indies membership levy, $275,000 in 2018, $197,000 in 2019. OE 81, World Anti-Doping Agency, $6,112 in 2018, $6,000 in 2019. OE 82, OE 83, OE 93, Caribbean Agriculture Research and Development Institute, CARDI, $94,141 in 2018 and $94,141 in 2019. All standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye. And those against, no. The ayes have it. Equity Investments, EI 12, Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture and Lands, $12,572,000.
You can block vote those two items too, Mr. Chairman.
All those in favor of EI 12, Ministry of Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture and Lands, $12,572,000 in 2018 and $17,633,775 in 2019. EI 46, University College of the Cayman Islands, $861,470 in 2018 and $320,491 in 2019. All standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
And those against, no. The ayes have it. Can I take this? I'm on a roll and I can just finish these.
No. This land purchase now. Sorry,
Mr. Chairman.
These land purchase, we want to know about these.
We'll take them
Mr. Chairman, one quick question for you, roll. And for the, I know they used to give some money to ICCI. Where is that under? Aye, God bless you.
Yes,
Thank
we've
you.
actually, Mr. Chair, without getting into specifics, they came and made a request to us, and the government met their requests with much satisfaction.
Thank you very much, madam.
Budget.
EA4, land purchase, $300,000 in 2018, $300,000 in 2019. Other questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, where is this land being purchased? And what's the use, what's the purpose of this purchase?
Mr. Chair, I'm just waiting for my lands ministerial officer to make his way this way. Mr. Chair, I'm reliably informed that this is the remnant 50% for the Town Beach property that we just acquired.
Aye.
All those in favor of EA4 land purchase, $300,000 in 2018 and $300,000 in 2019, standing part of the schedule to the bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, no. The ayes have it. EA9, land purchase, gazetted claims, $2 million 2018, $2 million 2019. Are there any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. All similar question through you, sir. Where is this land located, and again, what's the purpose of it?
Mr. Chairman, this is an amount that is put in pretty much year after year. It's to cover gazettas as you do roads. We have to do compensation based on assessment.
Okay, aye, that's fine then. Thanks.
All in favor of EA9, land purchase, gazetted claims, $2 million in 2018 and $2 million in 2019, standing part of the schedule up to the bill, please say aye. And those against, no. The ayes have it. Minister, do you have any closing comments for your?
Yes, sir, certainly. Thank you for the opportunity. Mr. Chair, I just wish to thank all members of this honourable committee, including your good self, for your indulgence, patience, and generosity at time, even from the member from Easton, all the members of my staff. I also wanted just to quickly add, Mr. Chair, as it relates to UCCI, we got a block vote, and I didn't want to interrupt, but I wish to put on record that this government and the ministry continues to see its significance, and they can rest assured that the support necessary is there for that establishment. Thank you, sir. Oh, one last thing. I'm extremely grateful that we got through at this particular hour, but I would be even more grateful if we had got through at 3:30, that I could have got to catch the flight to Cayman this afternoon.
Members of the committee, that concludes the examination of the appropriations to the Minister of Education, Youth, Sports, Agriculture and Lands. We're going to take the evening break at this time. I'm going to give us all 45 minutes and say let's be back into here at 5:45, 5:45, and we will complete the examination of the Minister of Finance and Economic Development.